Alright, so I'm down here in the shop. I got a 57 Chevy pickup in here today for some frame repair. As you can see, frame is split right here. It got rusty down here and they had a lot of weight sitting in the bed for many years. Finally the frame kind of caved in because most of the weight was up in the front of the bed and it just... So I'm going to have to fix that. I'm using some 3/16 plate. Got to drill out, or grind off and pound out all these rivets that hold on the cross member, spring perch, underside also. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a cutoff wheel and I'm going to take this cut and make it so that I can make them flush with each other. If you look close, you can see that one is kind of inside the other. That's just how it cracked, and then the weight kind of shifted it. So now I got the frame straight, and I'm going to cut this with a cutoff wheel and then clamp it together and weld this back together. So now that I got that all welded up and ground down, I'm going to start working on my steel plates here. Like I said earlier, these are 3/16 steel plates. I got them cut wide enough so that they overhang a little bit on both sides. That is good because then I can weld both sides to the frame, underside and then on the top here also. That'll give me more strength. Also, I have these cut in 13-inch lengths. I wanted them a little bit longer, but this is what I got. So I'm going to end up V-grooving these. You take off the edge of both of these in an angle, put them together, fill in the V-groove with a good hot weld, and it's good as one. If you look right here, you'll see that there's a little ridge. This ridge is keeping my plate from going on flat. See, it teeter-totters over this little ridge here. So in order to fix this, this is just like a bead rolled ridge from the factory. In order to fix this, I'm going to cut down the center, pound it flat, and then tack it back up again. Considering that I'm building all this around the original frame, it doesn't really matter how strong this is right here. Obviously you want to tack it back up, but it's not going to hurt the structural stability as long as you're patching over it like I am right here. So if you watch right here, I'm actually grinding the surface down to get it warm and also to make it thinner so it's easier to form. So before there's this ridge here, right? So I cut down the center. I'm hitting with the grinder fairly good until it gets black from the heat, and then you pound on it with the ball peen hammer. Like I said, the grinding makes the metal thinner and it makes it warm so it's easier to pound down flat. Otherwise, if you were just to do it without the grinding or without heating it of some sort, it'd be nearly impossible because the frame is 1/8 of an inch to 3/16 thick. Now you may think, well, this just seems a little ridiculous, right? You're doing all this work just to put this reinforcing plate over it. Well, you want this to be flat as possible. If there's anything in the way, you're not going to have a strong bond to the original frame here. A lot of people will think, well, why don't you just cut out the frame and splice in another piece? That just creates a huge mess. You're going to have to make sure everything's square, everything. But if you do it this way, you'll not only have the strength of what you add, but you have the strength of the original frame. Even if it is kind of weak in places, the outer layer here is what gives you your strength, and this gives you your mold to form it to. So now, if you look at it, put the steel on, there's no teeter-totter. It's flat, for the most part. You can continue to adjust until it's perfect. This right here is really nice. So, what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to weld this on here. Okay, now you can see that I got all of it all clamped up. Originally I started tacking the pieces and then I kind of cut them to fit. A couple of edges had to be trimmed so that it would fit perfectly along the bottom here. So once it was all tacked in place, I left it clamped up, and now I'm continuing to fill in all these cracks with weld. I want to get it as hot as possible, so you need to leave it clamped onto the frame. Otherwise, if you take it off and you weld it when it's not on the frame and you get it hot, it's going to warp. So you want to keep it clamped on the frame, and then once it's all welded, you can take it off. Actually, you want to mark all your holes first. Take it off, start drilling the holes, and then you can bolt those holes through the frame. You want as many bolts in it as possible, and then also mark the frame right here where you need to grind it away to get a good clean surface to weld to, and then you're going to weld all of that together once it's all bolted up. One little thing to keep in mind here is that welds create carbon. This little carbon buildup that you see in here, this brown and black stuff, that'll give you a weak weld if you don't brush that off before you continue the next weld. So you see right here, I stopped welding after a little 3-inch spot here, and there's the carbon buildup. So you want to make sure that you brush all of this away, especially where you're going to weld next, because otherwise, if there's carbon in here, it won't weld as cleanly, so you won't have as strong of a weld through the rest of this bead right here. Here's another tip for you. You see how I staggered these ends right here? This is the same concept as when you stagger tile. It's actually a stronger hold. So if you stagger it like this, see, you'll have one weld here, and then you have another weld an inch off. That makes it so that the pressure is spread out over more surface area. If it were to all be even, then all the pressure would be at this one point in the frame, and this one soft spot in the frame could kind of flex. So this little 1-inch lip is actually going to keep this thing from flexing, because it is an old frame and it is rusty. Did the same kind of basic deal on this side. You could also do that in the 4 plates in here, or however you decide to do it, but I decided not to because my welder is strong enough to give it a strong bead. A couple hours later of measuring and drilling holes, I got this set up. All the holes drilled out. Then I also just took a quick wire wheel to this frame where I'm gonna paint, or where I'm gonna mount this bracket. And then I took some good Rust-Oleum paint. Doesn't matter what color, it's just gonna get covered up. So I took it and painted over what's gonna be covered by the plate. That way it doesn't rust from the inside out. It doesn't transfer this rust that was on here onto the new metal. Alright, so I got this frame all done here. Got the e-brake cable ran back through the original hole. Bolted and welded. Used 030 MIG wire. Got it all so it's kind of sandwiched in between the original frame, or what was left of it, and the new metal. And then I also put this cross member back in. This will probably outlast anything else on this truck, so it'll work. Let me know if you got any questions.